Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Friday, the 19th of November. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined this lovely Friday morning by TV star Joshua Barrie. How are we doing, Joshua?
Just delighted to be on here, mate. This is my real habitat. So back in my comfort zone.
Yeah, back to the grind. And Jonny McFarlane down below me as well. How are we doing, Jonny?
Definitely not a TV star, Derek.
Not yet.
It's great to have you alongside us, as always, gentlemen. Before we continue, I know that loads of you are now watching us on YouTube. Thanks very much to you all for subscribing as well. If you haven't already done so, just hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a video when we go live. Okay, let's talk about the big news yesterday, gents. We done a breaking news video yesterday on the announcement that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is the new Rangers manager. He's going to bring in Roy Mackay as his number two, the former Feyenoord player. He was a teammate of Gio's, played for Holland, Bayern Munich, Deportivo, and he's bringing in one or two members of staff, which we'll touch on shortly. You've had time to digest the news, Jonny. I think we've been talking at length about Giovanni over the last few days. He's obviously not going to be in the dugout on Sunday. There's likelihood he's going to be in the stand watching the game. But what's your main takeaways of the news from the last 24 hours?
Extremely positive. Obviously, I think we've been saying over the last few days that we didn't think Van Bronckhorst would actually make it on time. The work permit issues were obviously absolutely forefront of that, given that we're now in a Brexit Britain. Means that all of a sudden, those deals with European players and managers that were previously slick and easy are now a little bit more difficult. So, yeah, I think that'll be why, obviously, Van Bronckhorst wasn't doing any media yesterday, for example. Don't think you can do media as a manager if you've not had your work permit agreed. You can't work. So that'll be why I would imagine he's not in the dugout for Sunday. And the fact that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to actually get on the training ground. He's as well leaving that to the guys that are already there, Dave McCallum and Brian Gilmore and Jermaine Defoe. And hopefully the players will be absolutely ready for this huge game on Sunday, knowing that their new manager is watching on and will be absolutely judging what he sees. It's a semi-final. It's a huge game. I don't think there'll be any sense that evidence will be cast aside. So the pressure's on for these guys. They've got to go out there and perform.
Joshua, I wanted to, just when you say work permit, Jonny, I sort of shuddered at the thought. I've got nightmares of Mario Jardel, but I don't think Gio will be under the same restrictions as the Brazilian. Joshua, Ross Wilson came out with an interview, although Giovanni didn't, of course, for obvious reasons, but Ross Wilson gave a very insightful and interesting interview to Rangers Television yesterday. What did you make of that? Just shows you how sort of thorough the process was to get a new manager in place.
Yeah, and as we said last night, Ross Wilson talks a very good game, comes across very well, but this was the first time that he had a real big challenge in terms of the quick turnaround that needed to happen. And if you look at the differentiation in moods between this week and last week, 7 days apart, I think it kind of speaks to the job that he is doing behind the scenes and the work that he is doing behind the scenes. The thing he always speaks about is processes, and the processes only come into place when they need to come into place. But yeah, it shows the benefit of having someone like him in the background. And we all remember previous managerial searches and how they were conducted in less professional manner, shall we say, because the processes and the structure of the club wasn't there. So yeah, fantastic to see that. I thought, he said as well he didn't want to put a date on it because the work permit and I guess all the logistics will have to be worked through. But I think the fact that Gio's now announced going into Sunday, as Jonny says, the players, there's absolutely no excuses. But I think in terms of having a figure there, I think that could have an impact as well, knowing that the new manager is in the stands. And Wilson again spoke of his trust in the backroom staff that are in place. He said as well at the end of that interview that he he called every single member of staff and player individually last week to kind of speak through the news with him, which was a touch at the end, but I thought it was a nice touch. It kind of demonstrates just the good inner workings of the club, and again, from what was looked at a bad situation last week, from the timing that Steven Gerrard has left to get supporter buy-in so quickly, to get such excitement so quickly is complete credit to him and the club.
Yeah, I thought that was a great touch from Ross Wilson, Jonny, and also the fact that he's managed to get a new manager in place in 6 days. He touched on that at the beginning of the interview, saying that he's rather tired after what's been quite a stressful and high intense week. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding. He'll have to deliver results, of course, on the park, but to get a manager of the calibre of Gio in within 6 days is. I know he was not in a job at that time, but to conduct that managerial recruitment process within that time is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and we know that Rangers were interested in other people and speaking to other people as well. So It's an incredible balancing act. There's been a lot of plates up in the air, spinning at the same time, and Ross Wilson's had to feverishly run about making sure that nothing quite falls. And he's done that. 6 days, as you say, Derek, it's a remarkable turnaround for a guy who's a big name in world football. Let's not forget Giovanni Van Bronckhorst captained a World Cup final team. He won the European Cup. He won the Premier League in the most emphatic fashion of all time as part of the Arsenal Invincibles. And obviously won the Spanish League with Barcelona as well. That's before you touch on what he's done in his managerial career. So this is a guy with serious pedigree. The one thing I think is interesting, goodness me, if he's a failure, no one can turn around and say that they didn't get behind it at the time. They can't be much looking back on events of the last few days and saying, well, we said that, we weren't sure about Giva. Everyone who's looked at his record, everyone who's listened to him talk, everyone who looks at his career, I don't hear any dissenting voices. Even Chris Sutton's saying it's a good appointment. So, it's very, very. Everyone's in unison on it. So I think that is unusual, and but that smacks of what is kind of an undeniably good, solid appointment that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the fans will be happy to take the flak if it doesn't go well. Let's talk about his backroom team, Joshua, because of course Roy Mackay will be joining him as the number 2. Touched on him briefly at the start of the programme. Now, in a playing sense, absolute quality in his day. Former teammate of Gio's, worked with him as an assistant at Feyenoord. As well as that, we believe that Arnold Phillips is coming in. He currently works for the Dutch national team as a physio, but he's set to be heading to Ibrox. He's previously worked for Feyenoord, PSV, the Turkey and Russian national team in Schalke. Yuri Boschart, he spent 13 years at Feyenoord as a youth coach before becoming a video and performance analyst. And he also worked in China with Van Bronckhorst as well. And Jean-Paul Van Gastel is likely to join up as well. He's currently over in China taking charge of Guangzhou City. Of course, he was there as Gio's assistant before taking over the reins. I don't expect you to know anything about those guys, Joshua, but they come with some pedigree, obviously, and it's important, I guess, that Gio brings in his own men.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. What we do know is it's so important, as we covered on the site over the last couple of days, to have people behind you as a manager that you can trust. Managers you'll see with Steven Gerrard going down to Aston Villa are very much the head of management teams, are dependent on the management teams in different ways because there's so many demands of this job now as a football manager, but also because it's so fine-tuned and minute in terms of in-game detail, player relations, everything you've got to work through. And I think for Gio, if he has people in alongside him that he can trust, I think that is the main thing. Obviously, again, we've discussed does he need someone who knows the league? And I am very much of the opinion that he knows the league, and he also has a group of players in there that are leaders that know the league. He's got Jermaine Defoe who knows the league. And he's got people like Ross Wilson as well. It's just night and day to a situation like Pedro coming into a club that was still in some form of turmoil, really, in terms of structure. and needed someone as a right-hand man to come in and provide information on Hamilton away. I don't think at all it's the same situation. And as I said yesterday as well, Gio's been to all these stadiums and one understands the demands of winning, understands how to win, understands where you're going to have to go and battle. I think that's so key coming in at this stage of the season as well, because there's not much room for error, not much margin for error. You know, you've got Hibs this Sunday, then I believe Sparta Prague, and then I think is it Livingston next Sunday at 12 o'clock, which is, you know, one of the most challenging away games in the Premiership, and certainly a kind of niche sort of game. So yeah, delighted that the backroom staff looked to be on their way as well. That was something that I was very keen to keep an eye out for, and I'm sure that's something that was a big part of the negotiations in the past week. And as Jonny says, you know, you've got no real voices saying this doesn't look like the right appointment. I think it's a case of everything marrying up. You know, his job with Feyenoord combined with his playing career, his reputation, where the club are now, I think matches up to be the perfect appointment when you've got supporter buy-in at this time of the season as well. So all very exciting, and hopefully his assistant joins up as well, because I know he took him to China in the first place, and I'm sure he's very integral to the way that Gio works.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to Hibs, Jonny, a question coming in here from John. Be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on whether you think Gio will reconsider the club captaincy. I don't personally. I know Tavernier comes in for a bit of stick at times. For me, I'm more than happy with James Tavernier being the club captain. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think new managers often come in and like to look at that sort of thing. But genuinely, Derek, I think it would be utter folly to do that at this stage of the season. If Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was coming in at the start of the season with a full pre-season ahead of him, I think it would be absolutely common sense to have a look at that. And if he felt there was a better leader in the group, then appoint that person. But I would not be on board with that at the moment. I do think James Tavernier has been a terrific captain for Rangers. I think that if Giovanni Van Bronckhorst did spend time looking at the squad, he'd probably come to the same conclusion that Steven Gerrard did. So I would advise him heavily, if he was asking me, and I know he won't be asking me, but if he did, that's not something you want to trifle with at this stage. And I think this is a massive part of this appointment that we've all got to understand. And sorry to bring Celtic into this, but I do think it's the best example. Because when you've got a manager that's very successful, that's team atop of the league, who leaves in the middle of a season, I mean, that's not something that we've seen too often in Scottish football. But it happened at Celtic a few years ago when Brendan Rodgers left. And Neil Lennon, it went disastrously wrong in the end. But what he did was he put ego to one side and he continued the Brendan Rodgers style. He continued the training. He continued the setup and tried to keep it as much as he could the same. And I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will have to do that same thing. He'll have to be a pragmatist. And listen, everything I've read suggests that he is. But you'll have to put aside his own philosophy a little bit to get to the end of the season with the trophies that Rangers want. That is the job. The job is not to come in and be a philosophy manager who believes in football this way or believes in football that way and change a winning side and disrupt things. The train is already on the tracks. It's already in motion. It's already heading towards the station. Your job is to guide it smoothly in. And I think that is the most important thing about how Giovanni Van Bronckhorst approaches this. So it's very, very, very important, I think, that he doesn't mess with things like the captaincy. And I don't for a minute expect him to. Yeah,
he's very conservative from what I'm hearing. I spoke to a Feyenoord supporter during the week, and I don't think he's going to mess with that. That's for sure. Gordon Watson gets in touch from Adelaide, no less. A very interesting point, Joshua. He's been watching the Scotland under-21s and seeing Glenn Middleton and Stephen Kelly playing very well. Is there a possibility to see these guys in Van Bronckhorst's future plans? Now, it was reported yesterday Stephen Kelly apparently attracting a bit of attention from north and south of the border. I, for one, would like to see him being given more game time. Glenn Middleton, you sort of forget about. But it's a clean slate, I guess, for guys like this.
Yeah, and I think particularly for Kelly, I know Middleton's obviously out playing games and Kelly isn't. And if you look at the last 2 seasons or 3 seasons even before this season for Kelly, he was out playing games, he was out on loan, and he won't want a year of no football at all to kind of discontinue some of the good work that was done over there. So I think with players in general, it will be a clean sheet. Obviously, we haven't even touched on the Nathan Patterson discussion, and that is rule number 1 in terms of figuring out players. You need to figure out a way to play them both, I think. I just think Nathan Patterson is too good. Again, the international break shows that he's too good to only start 10, 15 games this season, and it's hard to rotate your captain out the side. So, and I'm sure even again on Sunday, players will know that their places are up for grabs, and they'll be wanting to demonstrate their very best version of themselves. Stephen Kelly obviously did well in pre-season, but it's all kind of gone quiet since then. And I guess it depends what type of midfield he introduces. If it's more of a 2-man midfield supported by a player in front of them, maybe that is easier to bring a young player into as opposed to playing him as one of the 8s, which is maybe more specific in terms of what you have to do individually, or as one of the 6, which is obviously a very, very hard role to play on your own. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Stephen Kelly, a lot of supporters would like to see him given a chance, and if there's, again, like his predecessor, Van Bronckhorst knows what he wants in a midfielder, so I'm sure if he sees the qualities he desires, he'll give Stephen Kelly a chance.
Yeah, Derek, I'm sure everything that Joshua just said was really exciting, but I've been chuckling away at Ralph Cootsey's comment there.
I was going to just bring that up there.
That's 2 in 2 days.
You could be a looky-likey, Joshua. You could go to parties and all that and just shake people's hand, just kid on your Yanis Hadji.
I'll take that. As I said last night, not as good, not as two-footed, but no, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Derek, can I come in on something there? Just being a bit of an older fart, I remember when Dick Advocaat obviously arrived at Ibrox, and one thing about Dutch coaches, and this is a general thing, they love young players. And Dick Advocaat arrived, took a real good look at the Rangers squad, got rid of all the older players, but one young player stood out and he pulled him into the first team setup and made a hero and a legend out of him, and that was Barrie Ferguson. And I'm not saying Stephen Kelly is as good as Barrie Ferguson, far from it. Barrie Ferguson is a generational talent. And Billy Gilmore's, I think, the closest thing that we've seen to Barrie. But I would not be at all surprised if there's some sort of surprise from the youth setup that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst comes in and says, I like the cut of his jib, he's going to be involved in the first team setup going forward, and maybe even gets minutes. Because it's ingrained in the Dutch psyche to bring through young players. And that's the one area that in Gerrard's report card is marked F for failure. And that is bringing through talent from the academy. Let's be honest, he just didn't really have an interest. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of chat that maybe his relationship with the academy wasn't the best. Perhaps there was a difference of opinion on how things should be done in that regard. And only really Nathan Patterson broke through properly under Steven Gerrard. And I think a lot of people might question whether or not he actually did break through properly. But other than that, he gave Glenn Middleton a chance in the first season, and then he fell out completely out of favour. There wasn't a lot there. GVB, I think, will come in and try and reconnect that pathway between the B team and the first team, because that is in the Dutch DNA.
Yeah, I hope so. That certainly would be good to see more youngsters getting a chance, that's for sure. Joshua, let's move on to Sunday, because there's a huge League Cup semi-final taking place at Hampden. Rangers going up against Hibs. What are you expecting? Can you see Rangers progressing? Do you think that the news yesterday will give them a lift somewhat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if the manager hadn't been confirmed by then, it's a League Cup semi-final. These group of players collectively need to prove themselves in cup competitions. They need to be able to go and win these games. Rangers have not been at Hampden enough in the last 3 years whatsoever. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you're going to see, probably much of the same. I'm sure there'll be tweaks here or there. Obviously, you won't have Michael Beale and Stephen Gerrard overseeing it all. So there will be something different. Whether Giovanni, it wants to influence certain player roles or how certain players move on the ball, I don't think he's going to make huge structural changes. And Hibs haven't beaten Rangers in a long time, so you have to be confident that Rangers, if they play well, will win. But also they're a really dangerous opponent, and you've seen that in the previous game between the two sides this season, when up until they had a man sent off at Ibrox, they were, well worth their 1-0 lead, and who knows how that game would have unfolded if Porteous hadn't tackled Aribo as he did. So I expect it to be very difficult. Equally, you look at the squads before the international break, and that was a more sustained period of optimism since the season started. I think the likes of Kent and Sakala in the same team just bring something completely different and vary the approach in the final third. Kent as well against Ross County looked excellent, didn't he, for that hour or so he was on the pitch. Bakuna, who I think, pretty obvious to say he might benefit from Van Bronckhorst, but equally in that Ross County game, he looked like he offered something really different from the centre of midfield in terms of outplaying his opponent and bursting beyond with those third man runs in a different way from Scott Arfield. And I thought that was a really interesting new threat that Rangers could utilise. I think the squad probably go into it in a pretty healthy place with lots of options. Ryan Jack as well, having these players in and around, I think the squad is coming into it in a good place, and I think that'll have a big impact on things. And you've got to again trust that the club are happy with this, as happy as they can be with the coaching setup going into the game. Looking forward to it. I think it'll be a great game, and I think it will be a real party in the stands, won't it? And that will transmit onto the pitch, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think Rangers should have enough about them to take care of Hibs, that's for sure. But their cup record has been not the best, shall we say, to put it mildly. Okay, let's finish up, gents. Of course, there's a memorial service taking place today for Rangers legend Walter Smith at Glasgow Cathedral following his tragic passing at the age of 73. Now, supporters should note the service is not open to the general public. However, it will be available free to view across the club channels later today. So, we certainly urge you to tune into the likes of Rangers TV and what have you to watch that memorial service. Okay, that'll do us there. Remember, if you've not already done so, if you're watching us on YouTube, just to subscribe to the Rangers review, just hit subscribe so you'll never miss a video. And also on the website, just £2.99 a month to support top quality journalism covering the club you love. There's a raft of articles on there, in-depth insight into Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and what to expect, and there'll also be previews ahead of Sunday to come as well. Okay, gents, thanks very much for your time. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll be back on Monday.